Crossraguel Abbey is an abbey ruin, formerly a monastery, situated 2 kilometres southwest of Maybole in South Ayrshire in Scotland. It's one of the better preserved monasteries in Scotland. It is owned by the Historic Environment Scotland and currently closed for winter. It was founded in 1244 by Duncan, Earl of Carrick, and is linked to Paisley Abbey, the monks of which built the abbey on the land and from funding donations received from the Earl. Some monks transferred from Paisley to populate the abbey. Initially, only an oratory, a small chapel, was established, resulting in a dispute between the Earl of Carrick and the monks, which was settled in the Earl's favour by the Bishop of Glasgow and ultimately the Pope. This resulted in the abbey being constructed, although the first abbot is not on record until 1286, probably due to the dispute. The name is believed to be derived from the ancient Cross of Raighail, a prayer cross that stood at the location. Raighail was an Irish saint. The abbey was a Cluniac monastery, named after the French Abbey of Cluny, to whom they were responsible. The Cluniac Order was a branch of the Benedictines, as was Paisley Abbey, which was originally a Cluniac monastery, although it was raised to the status of abbey in 1245, answerable only to the Pope. The original structure was built within an extensive walled precinct, and associated buildings were probably timber. The abbey suffered significant damage during the Wars of Independence in 1307 by Edward I's men, due to the monks being loyal to Robert the Bruce, who was the Earl of Carrick, their patron. Subsequently, little of the original remains. In the 14th century, a simple rectangular church was built, together with buildings enclosing the cloister. The abbot's house was also erected. The choir was rebuilt with a polygonal east end, and the sacristy and chapel house were totally rebuilt in the 15th century. Thus, the only remains of the original structure is the south wall of the nave. As wealth of the abbey increased in the 15th century, further buildings were added around the south court, a second courtyard. These buildings are the corodiars, houses built for retirees, clergy or laymen who wish to spend their old age within a religious establishment. These are relatively common in England, but rare in Scotland. A fortified gatehouse was built in the 16th century by Abbot William Kennedy, which is well preserved, with 3 stories and a garret with a parapet. The Abbot's Tower, also built by Abbot Kennedy, was a second fortified building, but has sustained significant damage and is more of a ruin. At this time, a solid wall was built in the church to divide it, with the western part becoming the Lady Chapel, used by both monks and the laity, non-clergy. The dovecote was also built. This was home to pigeons, where the eggs and young provided food and the droppings were used as fertilizer in the gardens. It is believed that salt from seawater and gunpowder from charcoal were both produced on the premises. The overall layout followed that of a Benedictine monastery for the main buildings, including the church, the dormitory, latrines, refectory and cloister. Interestingly, the choir is not true east-west, although the high altar aligns with the sunrise. During the Scottish Reformation in 1561, the abbey ceased to be a monastery, and the buildings were partly destroyed, although less so than many other sites. In 1569, the commendator, the administrator in charge of the abbey, signed over the abbey to the Kennedys under torture. The monks were permitted to remain until 1592. The abbey lands were taken over by the bishops of Dunblane in 1617. There are many aspects which can only be seen by a visit to the site, which is open from April. However, unfortunately, some areas, including the church, are closed for masonry inspections, and I'm not sure when these restrictions will be lifted.